Okay, it's now 6 o'clock. I'm handing over to Dr. Kaseke. Dr. Kaseke, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nadir. Okay. Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session. So today we're hosting one of 3 sessions that will be focused on post-community service and essentially ushering yourself into that new aspect of your life. So I am your host for today. My name is Dr. Kaseke, or Maki. I go by Maki mostly. And today we'll be hearing from 3 speakers. We'll be hearing from Ruhann Botha, Jancke Mentz, and then Shadé Breedt, but Shadé does work on the ships, which you'll hear about later, so she might not be able to join. We'll just have to find out as the session progresses. So the format for the sessions is that we will have 3 presentations from each of our speakers. So Ruhann will start, then we'll move on to Jancke, and then on to Shadé, and then we'll have questions at the end of the session. As I mentioned in the beginning, and I'll also remind you guys of this at the end, this is the first of 3 sessions, which is great. So the next 2 sessions will be held later in November, but all the sessions will take place within November. Okay, perfect. So let's start with our first speaker. He goes by the name Dr. Ruhann Botha. He will be speaking about life in the public sector. Ruhann is Pretoria born and bred. He studied at Stellenbosch University and then did his internship in East London and then moved on to do ComServe in Mpumalanga. They shipped him all the way to Mpumalanga. If you're in Mpumalanga, I hope you can relate to that experience. And just somehow, he managed to crack the code, and this is what we all want to find out. He cracked the code, and he's currently working as a registrar in the Wits circuit, just a few months out of ComServe. So we'd love to hear so much more from Ruhann about this. Take it away, Ruhann.
Thank you, Maki. So as Maki said, I'm Ruhann Botha. So a lot of you might know me as the chairperson of JUDASA. But yeah, I'll take you through sort of working in the public sector. So yeah, Maki already said I did my internship in East London at the East London complex, so Frey Hospital and Cecilia Makiwane. Then I did my community service at Temba Hospital in Mpumalanga, which is a rural hospital, but quite a big hospital and the biggest in Mpumalanga. And I think if you've attended any of the ICSP sessions that we did, I'm quite a big supporter of doing your community service in a rural place. Also a big supporter, and I'm telling it to all the students and interns that I'm meeting during my journey to try and go to a different province to where you've studied or live or constantly work, just to sort of broaden your exposure to different kinds of healthcare systems. Then I worked for a few months in a private casualty. So Jancke will talk a lot about that. But during that time, I also did some time as a surgical assistant. I think the reality is a lot of doctors, unfortunately, are still going to be unemployed after their community service here. It's something that as SOMA and JUDASA, we're really trying hard to address, and it is at times you do see a lot of posts being advertised, and that is encouraging, but still not enough. So unfortunately, the first few months after community service in reality is going to be hard and difficult, and you need to try and find, when you don't get into the public sector, other ways of finding employment. And the other 2 will talk about some of the options, but I just want to elaborate a bit on the surgical assistant, that there is the surgical assistant group that you can use. You fill in the forms with them from their website, and then you can join them. But you're not always going to get opportunities from there. You also definitely have to go and put yourself out there, go to hospitals, speak to hospital managers in the private sector, trying to get your name out there so that people can contact you. Once you're in, you'll have a lot of opportunities, but you have to put yourself out there. And then I'm lucky enough, and as Maki said, I cracked the code. I think some days I'm still wondering how I cracked it, and also not. There are days where you feel maybe it's a bit early, but you take what you can in the current climate. But yeah, I'm currently working as a registrar in general surgery in the Wits circuit, currently doing trauma at Barra, which is exciting, but it is hard. And I think the word hard is what I want to emphasize here, is that the journey is going to be difficult, and you're going to have to put yourself out there. So I think another word is connections. So wherever you work, whether it's your internship, your community service, or working even in private, is to build connections. You might, especially if you were in your hospital, you do your internship, if you try and build connections, those consultants, if they remember you, will inform you when there are interviews. I've had a lot of interviews at my hospital in the Eastern Cape, and a lot of them I knew of because of medical officers there, head of departments there, informing me that those interviews are happening. Then also during your community service here, try and build connections there, but especially during your community service, and we'll talk about courses to do now, build your connections at the courses that you do, especially at ATLS, and some of the courses that are being presented by universities, such as the ICU course. Connect with the specialists that are there. It's a bit daunting sometimes going out and talking to them, but that's how you meet people that when you go for an interview, you will know someone on a panel and they will know you. But it's also, if you walk into a room, especially if you're going to go for interviews, say at Wits, you might walk into a room where there's 20 to 25, 30 people looking at you. And if you just see one face that you recognize, it does put you at ease a bit. So connections is very important. And then in this whole journey of that I had to go through, there's a lot of interviews. I think a lot of people get dismayed when they have, let's say, what they see as a failed interview, so they didn't get the post afterwards. But I want to sort of challenge you to see it as an opportunity interview. I've had a lot of interviews before I got my job in the state sector, but every interview is where you have an opportunity to improve yourself, not only in how you answer, but also your personal skills, how you present yourself. A tip that I have for interviews is listen to the question and try and answer what they're asking. So, for example, example in a trauma case, if they tell you have a gunshot abdomen coming in and they ask you how you're going to manage it, just start off by saying the ATLS principles and ask them if they want you to elaborate. Because they all know if you're going to go for certain posts, everyone has ATLS. You don't necessarily want to go into the details of that. They want to know the other things. So be straight to the point. Don't talk too much. They also want to see that you are concise and that you can get to the point. And then another tip for interviews would be to go and use AI. I think the SAMA CEO will be happy that I'm bringing in artificial intelligence, but use ChatGPT. Just open a chat with it and put in there that you are going for an interview. You can even say at which hospital, which department. If you've asked around and know if they're asking mostly clinical or non-clinical questions, you can add that. And it's actually a bit scary, but they are very accurate in the questions you are going to get. So use ChatGPT. So tell it where you have your interview, what department, and telling them that you need help to prepare. And then there's practice modes. You can tell it you want a practice mode, you want a formal mode. And it will really, really be to your advantage. It really helps you to prepare well. And like I said, it's scary how accurate the questions are that ChatGPT asks you, and you're going to get a lot of them in your interviews. But it also just helps you to get ready to think on your feet. Jancke, we can go to the next slide. So then talking about the courses, unfortunately now with the big pool of unemployed doctors, you need to have as many courses. You have to have what we now refer to as the basic courses. So ACLS, PALS, ATLS, basic surgical skills, basic ICU. I think that is what most people are going to have. And I think what is important is not just with courses, but just your CV in general, is to try and do things that will make you stand out. So one example would be that if you're interested in pediatric surgery, to reach out to pediatric surgery departments and asking them if they have courses. So George Macquarie or SMU at the beginning of the year did a neonatal surgical course, which if you can do that and add that to your CV, it is something that's going to make you stand out. The same with Tygerberg Hospital or campus doing sort of a trauma surgical course but that's before the DSTC, so a bit lower grade one. If you have that, you're one of a few people in the country that will have that. And then there's a lot of other courses. You need to try and for now do a bit more to make yourself stand out. And you can do that by contacting universities, asking what courses they have. You also have a laparoscopic suturing course that if you have that, it just elevates your CV already. And when you have a better CV, you also feel a bit more confident when you go into your interviews. And then also to make yourself stand out is that if you have off days, a lot of people are doing it now, is if you're working in private and have some days, is to go and volunteer sometime in the public. I don't say you have to go and do that all the time, but just sometime just to get your name out there, like I said, making connections so that people know who you are. And then also to try and elevate your CV is to get involved in sort of non-clinical things as well. So try and if you now have an opportunity, if you see there's associations or things having committees that are interviewing, try and join those so that you can add things to your CV, like I said, to try and elevate yourself. And then, Jancke, we can move on for my last slide. Unfortunately now, especially if you want to go for a registrar position, having research is very, very important. So the question sort of will be what research to do, when to do it, how to do it. Again, if you have the connections, the people to talk to, just ask your consultant. There's a lot of consultants who won't mind helping you in research, and it doesn't have to be a groundbreaking study. If you're at a rural hospital that you think maybe have an interesting protocol for managing crush, ask them if you can do a study on that. And you don't have to do something prospective. You just ask. You get the numbers, or file numbers, and you do the research from people that already been managed. Like something small, it can be a review, but as long as you are the principal investigator, so that your name is first on the study, that will already count in your favor. And then just speak with them. So the consultants will know what routes you have to follow. So if you're not at a university, university-linked hospital, it might be a bit more difficult, but there are ethics committees that you can apply to even if you don't work in necessarily their hospitals. So speak with your consultants where you're working and try and do that. It can be any form of research, like I said, as long as you are the principal investigator, because what they want to know if you go for a registrar position is that you sort of know a little bit how to do research, because unfortunately you have to do an MEd, and that's only research, and it makes it easier, I think, for yourself as well, not just for getting the job, but when you are working to try and already know how to do research to ease the MEd process. So I think, to summarize, I would say the importance to put yourself out there, to make connections, and to try and elevate yourself, but also to have patience. Like I said, it is the first few months after ComServe will be scary. I'm also a big supporter of taking some time to rest. We don't realize really how tired we are after internship and community service until you take time to rest. I think myself and a lot of my friends who didn't have jobs, in the beginning, it's very stressful, but then you actually realize after a few weeks how tired you are and how much you needed the rest. Some of my friends were lucky enough to get immediate private sector jobs, and they only realized a bit later how tired they were, and then to try and get leave to rest is very difficult. So have patience, give yourself time to rest, give yourself time to do interviews, and to have that opportunity to grow, not necessarily an opportunity that you might see that you failed at, but every interview interaction that you have prepares you for the next one and the important one where you're going to get the job. And then always keep your eye out for advertisements. So save the Gauteng, the Western Cape, and all those provinces as pages. Go and look once a week. Keep an eye on the Facebook groups. People are really good there at sharing. And then there are also a lot of WhatsApp groups where you can join with people who are nice enough to share everything. But build your connections so that your consultants can contact you when they have any jobs or positions that might open. So I think that's from my side for now. We'll listen to our other speakers, and then in the end, we'll take some questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maki.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ruhann. That was a wonderful speech. I think the key takeaways were obviously keep an open mind, especially when talking about internship and ComServe. The interns and ComServes interns got their placements, and the finance students got their placements. That's also something to think about. And I definitely agree, like putting yourself out there, really trying to make connections, building connections is super important. We are realizing more and more that it isn't necessarily what you know, but who you know. And I think what you know can sometimes only take you so far. So thank you so much for your presentation. So then our next speaker is Dr. Jancke Mentz. She studied at Tux, did her internship at Paradise, and then subsequently did her ComServe at a CHC in Bloemfontein. She applied to over 40 jobs in the government sector before she decided to move and try finding jobs in the private sector. She fortunately now has a permanent post at a Netcare ED, quite a busy one at that, and then does some GP locum work on the side. And she's currently working towards her DIPEC, but is actually really passionate about the business side of medicine and is working towards doing an MBA possibly in 2027. In terms of fun facts about Jancke, she plays the saxophone, which is a very cool instrument. My dad plays it as well. She loves building puzzles and spending time with her family. And she has said that she would either be a radio DJ or an MSF coordinator if she was not a doctor. So thank you so much, Jancke, for giving us your time and helping us learn some more about the private sector. Please take it away.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Hi.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, my slide wasn't going on. Okay. So, hi guys. My name is Jancke. I am still at work now. I'm sitting in the doctor's room here. I'm working at a very, very busy netcare, and I just finished my shift. Not actually, I have to go back after this. But I'm just going to go through how I actually secured this job and kind of the nice thing about private is there's lots of opportunities and various ways that you can work after ComServe as a general practitioner, and you can kind of make the job your own. I'm going to go through, so my journey was said now, but basically, I finished ComServe last year in Bloemfontein at a CHC, was a bit all over the place, applying for lots of registrar and MO posts all over the country. I'm very unsuccessful in all of that. I secured a post in Johannesburg at a locum agency that runs about 5 private emergency departments, quite busy ones. The company is called EDMG, or Dr. Nay and Piccolo Inc. And they run Alberton Hospital, Mill Park Hospital, so quite like the 2 level 1 trauma facilities here in Gauteng. So I just secured a bit of a locum post there, but it's very it wasn't ideal because it's literally just a sit and wait game where you get scheduled for two shifts per month, and then you end up doing 12. So you just sit and wait for them to call you to come do a shift. So it's very unpredictable, and the money is also unpredictable because of that. But the shifts were lovely, and I really learned a lot, and it's a good business run there. Definitely, private medicine is definitely a business, and I enjoyed that aspect as well. I also locumed a bit at a GP in Johannesburg, but subsequently didn't really have a permanent income and wanted a bit of stability and rostering in my life. I wanted to get rid of the unpredictability, and then I found an emergency department post permanently at a netcare in Pretoria. And I've been working there since April. I do most of my shifts here. I don't work at any other hospital. I do still locum at a GP practice, but I secured this post there. I'm going to I'll explain how I managed to get an emergency department post. So there's various options in private that you can go through, as I explained, and you can make it's quite versatile. I'm gonna try just go through the clinical aspects. So the first thing you can do is you practice as a general practitioner. You can open your own practice. If you have saved up money, if you've done the research, there's lots of factors that can go in there, and we discussed it at length in last year's webinar that is available on SAMA's YouTube page, and how you go about opening your own practice. You can also join a practice, so you can buy in at a practice and be a permanent GP there, or you can locum. So you do random shifts, and usually you get paid on commission based or get paid per patient, depending on the practice and how busy it is and things like that. So that can also be quite nice because you can make a name for yourself and start getting patients that actually want to see you or prefer you or walk along the road with you. Next is you can work in an emergency department. Most netcare, life, mediclinics, and some private practices or private emergency departments, for example, like the Johannesburg Surgical Hospital, or they're just not associated with life or mediclinic or netcare. So that's where I'm currently at. So I'm working as a general practitioner, but in an emergency department. Then the next thing you can do work for the transport companies. So the 2 biggest transport companies in South Africa is Rocket and Netcare 911. They call them HEMS, the helicopter airlifting transport thing. So I'm going to go through how you can get a job there, and it's if you're an adrenaline junkie, I think it's perfect for you. And it's very, very exciting, and long hours and good hours, and I think can be quite fulfilling to transport a patient safely at a next facility. You can do surgical assisting, like Dr. Botha also mentioned. There's quite a few ways that you can get into assisting surgically. It's good money as well, and it's good exposure to get your name out there as a future surgeon, or yeah, just to get contacts and everything. You can also do something like be a physician's assistant, where the Netcare where I work at, we have quite a large ICU. We have 110 beds in our ICU. So we do need a lot of assistance. The physicians really need a lot of assistance to take care of all these ICU patients. I think we only have 7 permanent physicians here running that 110 bed ICU. So what they've decided to do is they've decided to employ general practitioners or internal medicine MOs, or depending on your level of skill, they employ them as what we call RMOs. And the RMOs work in ICU, they work in high care, and they basically run the patients for the physician during the night, so that the physicians can either focus on the very sick patients or sit at home. So you work in an ICU setting or a high care setting, and you rotate, and you just literally assist the physician to get through their patients, and you get paid quite well for that. And that's we can go through that as well, how you can get involved there, but you do need a lot of courses and a lot of references to secure a job like that. We can now, I mean, telemedicine is a very, very good big thing that's starting to happen now. There's various companies that you can join. You can join. I mean, you can become the doctor at Discam, or things like that, that you can work from home as a medical general practitioner and give advice. And there's various routes that you can get around to actually assisting patients. And I know, for example, there's a company in Limpopo, I think Polokwane, I can't remember the name now, but what they do is they employ general practitioners to sit at home. You have your internet access, and then they get patients that wants to see a general practitioner to go to either the local church or the local school, or somewhere close by where there is a community healthcare worker working there with a vital station. So if you know that you have an appointment at 12 o'clock online with a general practitioner, before that appointment, you go to the church, the local church, or the local hospital, or the local school, where there's a community healthcare worker. They'll allocate someone. That community healthcare worker takes your vitals, your sugar, your BP, your everything, loads it on the system, and then by the time you see the patient at 12 o'clock online, the vitals are there, so you can actually act on them and get a proper, like a chronic follow-up and feedback. Obviously, if a patient presents with chest pain on telemedicine, you just refer immediately. So something example like that. But it's also a very, very good way to get to lots of patients that just cannot afford necessarily a general practitioner visit, because it is usually quite cheaper to see a telemedicine doctor. Then next, you can become a consultant for medical aids, Workmen's Compensation Act, insurances, for SASSA grants, all of those. You can actually be the doctor that's involved with making decisions about those insurances and those decisions with regards to that. You can become a quality surveyor. There's quite a few things how you can get in there. I'm not going to extend much into that, because that's more a bit non-clinical and more admin related. And then research, and then there's a few non-clinical options as well, but which we'll go through later on a later stage. So the first thing, okay, so if you want to work in a private casualty, okay, which is the job that I have, there's quite a few things that needs to be in place. It's due to policies at Netcare, Mediclinic, Life Hospitals, and it's to ensure that the care that you're providing is adequate, the care that you're providing is up to standard according to all of their protocols and things. So there's a reason they're so picky and difficult to employ people, but it is for the safety of the patient and the safety of the business. So the first courses that you really, really have to have, especially to work in a Netcare, Mediclinic, or a Life emergency department, is ATLS or MATLS, which is the shorter ATLS course, and usually most of it is online. ATLS, I know, is very, very difficult to get. The waiting list is usually two years. I was on the waiting list for 2 years. From my first day of internship, I put myself on every single waiting list in the country. I only got space in my ComServe year, 2.5 years later, in March of that year. But I did ATLS and I managed to get it. So you just need to be on all the waiting lists for ATLS to get that. Then ACLS, lots of people provide it, and it's not so difficult to get yourself into a spot to do that course. PALS, Pediatric Advanced Life Support, BLS, obviously, because you need BLS to get PALS and ACLS. Some private emergency departments prefer if you have a bit of exposure to sonar. There is quite a few places where you can get a level 1 course. EMSA, the EMSA website, EMMSA. You can go for a sonar course, and it's just basics. It teaches you how to do an e-POCUS, and because you're going to see a lot of trauma patients and undifferentiated patients that will need a bit further investigation. So that's where a sonar is just, it backs you, and it makes you a bit more confident about to speak to specialists, and it's been very, very helpful. I think I did 4 sonars today, and also, I mean, you do lines and you put CVPs and everything on, and that course just helps with that as well, with a difficult line and things like that. Then some private casualties also prefer if you have a basic ICU course. It is quite difficult to get into a basic ICU course as well. There's not a lot available in the country. You can do it at Baragwanath Hospital, Groote Schuur Hospital, Livingston Hospital also has a course, and there's a few online courses here and there. I was also, again, on the waiting list for 2 years. I finally got a spot. I'm doing the basic ICU course at the end of the month, and so I got the job without the ICU course, but they keep asking you, when are you doing it? When are you doing it? So the basic ICU course just teaches you how to interpret a blood gas, how to ventilate a patient, how to know when to intervene with a ventilated patient, because you will be dealing with those type of patients often and daily. Then some private casualties also, it counts in your favor if you have private primaries in the emergency care. That's something that you could do without having any exposure or experience. You can do it in your ComServe year. You can write the primaries. And then some private casualties also prefer if you have the diploma. I know for the company that I worked for before, EDMG, they actually, if you have the diploma in emergency care, you get paid more per hour than the people without the diploma. So it does enhance your CV, it enhances your salary as well. And because they know if you have the diploma in emergency care, you are seen as a bit of a safer doctor, and a doctor where the medical insurance can actually back you if any mistakes are done, because you have the course on your name. So, but it's not a requirement to get a job, but it is in my contract specifically now for permanent ED work. It does say that I have to do the diploma in emergency care within 2 years in order to keep my contract here alive. So it is something that eventually you will have to do. Then, and for the diploma in emergency care, you need 12 months exposure in an emergency department, and that's usually ComServe here is enough for that. Then the next thing you really have to have is medical indemnity insurance or malpractice insurance. There's a bunch of companies that provide. The biggest ones is MPS, PPS, Genoa, and there's quite a few, and you just need to read up about it and know the loopholes and know what you're paying and what you're paying for and why you need to pay for it. It's very, very important. You will not get employed anywhere in private if you don't have medical indemnity insurance. So the insurance differs depending on what you do and what you get exposed to and what type of work you do. So for me, for example, I work in a private ED and I do locum work. So I am covering myself for both GP, and usually the emergency department cover is quite broad, and you get covered for sonars, you get covered for everything. If a patient has an inquiry and stuff, they sort you out. And usually I would suggest that your cover is not less than 30 million. We had a patient that took us to court the other day, and the payout started at 20 million. So then the indemnity insurance just took it, took it over very, very easily. So usually the payout is, these days, it's never less than 15 million. So just cover yourself properly so that you don't have any financial burden with regards to that. And then some private sector emergency departments prefer if you have your own practice number. It's the practice numbers in South Africa is done through the practice code numbering system, or the PCNS website. This is if you charge for something that the medical aids are going to pay you directly. I don't, for example, I don't have my own practice number. I usually use the practice number wherever I work. But if you do like surgical assisting, or if you put on lines and you charge the patient separately, or if you work in a private ICU, just somewhere where the medical aids will physically need to pay you, then you need a practice number. So just take that into account. You fill in the PCNS forms, you apply, I think it's about 300 Rand a year, if I'm not mistaken, to keep your practice number active. And yeah, so that's just something that you take into account as well. Then in terms of private GP posts, very similar things, not necessarily ATLS. It just looks good in it, and then you can quickly do ED work or locum work as well in an emergency department. ACLS is preferred, PALS is preferred, and BLS obviously is also preferred. You need medical indemnity insurance and a practice number occasionally, especially if you are buying into a practice, or if you are going to open your own practice. Okay, but if you are just a locum within a practice, you usually use that doctor's practice number that they already have established. Then how to get involved in transport, okay? How to get involved with either Netcare 911 or Rocket. So those are the two biggest companies in South Africa. The government hospitals do actually have transport as well, or the helicopter things, but they use Netcare. They have a contract with Netcare 911 or Rocket. So if you're involved there, you will basically transport private or state patients there. So what you need quite a lot of things, because you are seen as a primary physician, and you are seen as the main person deciding clinically what to do with this patient. So you definitely need ATLS, ACLS, PALS. Most of them prefer that you have the neonatal advanced life support course as well. BLS, Sonar level 1 course, definitely. Basic ICU course is always also going to count in your favor, and then either primaries or the diploma will also help on your CV. Then you have to understand the level of care amongst paramedics quite well, because you're going to work with a lot of ECPs, so they are the highest ranking paramedic, and you're going to work alongside them on most of the flights. You're not going to be flying. That's the pilot's job. And most of the pilots are not medically trained. That's not their problem. Their problem is to get you safely to the hospital. So that's where you get involved within the flight alongside an ECP usually. How to get an interview or a post with Netcare 911 or Rocket is very important, is pre-hospital exposure. So being on the scene, being there when there's a mass casualty, being at just having experience with transporting undifferentiated or sick patients is very important, and that's usually what you do for free. You just get exposure. You have to do a bit of job shadowing with paramedics. They're usually very, very comfortable with you following them around, and just learning on the job. And working at things like events, a big massive concert and things like that will also count in your favor, because it's all about getting those job shadowing hours in your place, and ensuring that if you get signed off for those hours, Netcare 911 or Rocket knows that you're safe and you can actually transport patients with your exposure that you have. You have to be comfortable with transporting unstable and undifferentiated patients. You have to be able to manage difficult patients in difficult environments, on the side of a mountain, within water, all of those things. You have to be a bit of an adrenaline junkie to be able to take the adrenaline out or take the situation out and focus on the patient. You have to be able to delegate and know when to escalate care. You usually mix your own infusions. You have to be very, very comfortable to intubate, set up a vent, maintain the vent, all of those things, because you're usually alone alongside the ECP, obviously, but they are doing their own things. And sometimes it's a mass casualty and then you are alone. So you have to be very confident and I think a bit cocky to be able to run this show. And those people are usually exactly where they need to be, the people that work on NECI 911 or Rocket. Medical indemnity insurance obviously is very important, and you'll do specific things for NECI 911 or Rocket, a specific section for that. Usually with NECI 911 or Rocket, you also do something called a safety course alongside your hours and the job shadowing that you've been doing. You do the safety course, and then they know that you are safe to go out. You will have a lot of shadowing and a lot of like more people involved before you are actually flying alone or flying just with an ECP. And yeah, so they will not throw you in the bundus, but they will might do it quicker than you expect. Then a practice number is very, very important because medical aids get paid directly to you or to the company. Okay. Okay, things for the private surgical assisting posts. As Dr. Botha mentioned previously, there's quite a few ways that you can get involved with surgical assisting in private. You can download the surgical assisting app, which is all over South Africa. There's a lot of people on that app. You have to register with all your courses and everything and your practice number and everything, but there's a lot of people involved, and it's literally first come, first serve. So if a surgeon is looking for an assistant, they will just mention on that one. It's literally like a WhatsApp group and an app. They'll say, I have space for, I'm looking for an assistant at 3 o'clock for a cesarean section. And then 2 seconds later, okay, post taken. So it's literally first come, first serve, where you assist, and then you have to drive and go assist this doctor. So that's how that kind of app works. So it's very, very difficult, I think, to get to be comfortable and to be used often there. Whereas I think my one friend, my one colleague that works with me here, he assists quite often, but what he did is in the beginning of the year, he went to almost 140 surgeons, and he specifically likes orthopedics. He went to private orthopedic surgeons in and around Gauteng. He made an appointment with them and sat down with each of them, explained his story, explained what he wants to do, and asked them, can I have a bit of a friendship or a relationship with you? And not relationship, that's the wrong word, but can I have build up a rapport and kind of just get into the good books of the surgeons and get a name out there for yourself to so that they call you when they need you. And then that's how you get a relationship, and that's how you end up assisting for years and years and years with the same surgeon. Most surgeons are quite picky with their assistants, so they don't want random people that they've never worked with before. So that's kind of, you just have to put yourself out there, and that's where connections is also very, very important. People that actually know you and know that you assist well is going to assist you definitely here. In terms of the surgical assisting app, you need ATLS, ACLS, PALS, BLS, and some of them requires a surgical skills basic course. But it's not a necessity for most of the assisting jobs. It's more about experience. Indemnity insurance, obviously, and then PC&S. You need a practice number because the medical aids pay out the assistant personally. Then there is that's why I said okay. So that's kind of how you get into private surgical assisting. Telemedicine, we've discussed how you can get involved there. There's quite a few online things, and it's expanding exponentially currently. With regard to that, it's quick, easy, cheaper consultation, so people tend to prefer it. There is a lot of medical legal stuff that is involved, and I think it's busy evolving and like the medical indemnity insurance and all of those things are kind of trying to keep up with the hype and the vibe of telemedicine. It's so brand new. The legislation is not properly worked out yet for telemedicine. So just make sure that you cover yourself and that you are always doing it for the patient and not just for the consultation fee and the quickness. But telemedicine, I think, is going to change the game for chronic patients and chronic follow-ups. I think it's such an easy way to see your patient without actually having to see your patient. And I think we're going to be able to reach lots more people that is unable to walk or unable to go to the facilities, or actually doesn't necessarily need to go to facilities. I've worked at a company before where we did telemedicine for like the patients with ADHD or that's on chronic Ritalin or Concerta or something like that, and they only allowed, because it's a Schedule 6 drug, they're only allowed to get 1 monthly script. So what they decided to do is they decided to do telemedicine consultations, charge the patients less, and then they can still the medical aids still cover it instead of the 600 or 700 rand that they would pay for a normal consultation. They happily pay out the 300-400 rand for the telemedicine consultation. That's going to happen once a month for this ADHD and things like that. So there's lots of options, and it's very exciting. I'm excited to see what's happening and where it's going, and hopefully it will cause less patients to actually be in our emergency department, so that they get worked up much quicker. How to get involved there, you'll have to do lots of research, and I think just get a name out there for yourself. They don't necessarily post jobs there. I think the people that work at SASSA or medical aids are quite chronically there, and have been there for a few years. But I do know for a few people that has started working with insurances and medical aids, and you just kind of have to contact them and hear if they have any post available, and make sure what they need from your side. Maybe they need an MBA, maybe they need some sort of managerial post or experience or leadership experience. It just depends, honestly, of the post, but it's just more but non-clinical. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll answer any questions afterwards.
Thank you so much, Jancke. That was a fantastic presentation. So much information and very well researched. I think that as a ComServe myself, I honestly did not know that you needed this much stuff to go into some of these roles. So this is really, really key information that I think isn't really being publicized and that we aren't really finding out about. So this is a fantastic way to distribute that kind of information. And Jancke also emphasized something that Ruhann also emphasized, which is that you need to make connections, try get to know people, because those might really be where you find jobs in the future. And also putting yourself out there, trying something different, and also getting as many courses as possible, because, wow, the list is extensive. Okay, so our last speaker is Dr. Shadé Breedt. She graduated from Stellenbosch University summa cum laude, and as a Stellenbosch graduate myself, I have never heard of anyone doing that, so that is amazing. She also published several international articles in her time at Stellenbosch. She did her internship at King Edward Hospital in KZN, and then did her ComServe at Helderberg Hospital in the Western Cape. She graduated with a diploma in emergency care as well as a diploma in HIV management during her ComServe, and currently works on the MSC cruise ships with her husband, Dylan. She's also currently working on her master's in public health through the Imperial College of London, and is a really big fan of the movie Tangled. And a last very, very, very interesting fact is that she is a fiction author and is working on a historical fiction book, a series of books, which, judging by her CV, will probably be just as exceptional as she is as a person. So I'm not sure if she's been able to join. If she is unable to join, then we will play a video from her. But oh, there she is. Fantastic. So Shadé, please take us away.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Maki. Jancke, I'm going to ask that you just pop onto the first slide and we'll get right into it. So as Maki mentioned, my name is Shadé. I'm currently working for MSC Cruises, or Mediterranean Shipping Company Cruises. And so that is really important disclosure of interest. I'm not here to advertise for them, and I'm not speaking in their capacity. There are many different cruise lines and different companies that you could reach out to and that might be able to employ you. So I'm going to try and speak in general terms, but obviously take note that I will be speaking from my own personal experience, and this is based on a single company. Having said that, I do think that MSC Cruises is an amazing company, and especially their medical operations, with whom all of us would be working if you were interested, is a fantastic department. The other disclosure is, as I mentioned, this is my personal story. So it is subjective in terms of opinion, and it is a journey that has led me to where I am today, but it might not necessarily be for you or for everyone. And so certain of those who are on the call would have strongly related to what Ruhann was saying about public, or what Jancke was saying about private, and that's fantastic. And if that is your next step, definitely pursue that. I'm not here to tell you in any way that what I am doing is superior, but it was the right decision for me, and perhaps it could be the right choice for some of you here today. So if it is something that you are interested in, I'm hoping that I can provide slightly more insight and answer some of your questions today. Let's go on to the next slide. Thank you so much. So let's start with the decision. How did I make this choice? How did I get here? And essentially, even though I didn't know it at the time, it started during my internship. So those of you who might know me would know that I had a really tough time during internship, and it was quite tough, especially those first couple of months when we were in the adapting phase. To be honest, I cried most days, and I just really disliked my life in general. And I had a difficult time even going through some existential crisis now and then. I didn't have a bad placement for internship, so it wasn't necessarily where I was placed. I had really good mentors, but there was a component of shell shock because of the high workload and the heavy emotions that you go through every day. And I mean, I'm not going to ponder on this long. I believe that most people on this call have already been through internship, and you will have survived ComServe in only 2 months. So congratulations on that. And again, don't get me wrong, my experiences in internship and ComServe was invaluable. I learned a lot about myself, about those around me, life in general, and I went through an enormous amount of growth. Gained a lot of resilience, and especially as a ComServe, I think I learned more about medicine than I had in any of the 8 years before. But there was very little of me left at the end of internship and the end of ComServe. And so my husband and I decided that we needed a break from traditional medicine, and neither of us had the capacity after ComServe to jump right into the very, very commendable but exhaustive rat race for a specialization post. And to be honest, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do anymore, because there was very little about medicine that I was still enjoying at that stage. And so, like several of my classmates, I started considering going abroad. So I wrote my Canadian exam, but then after a lot of prayer, my husband and I didn't feel quite right. We didn't have the peace that we wanted about moving to Canada. And so we started looking into something a little bit different, and to something that was more adventurous in nature. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so let's talk about the process. How did I actually go from ComServe to becoming a cruise ship doctor? So even though I was contemplating other options and considering different things at the time of ComServe and just after ComServe, it was not a complete spur of the moment decision. And I'm going to talk about we a lot because my husband Dylan, as Maki mentioned, is also a doctor, and he's also on the cruise ship with me. So a lot of this we were considering together. And so we started inquiring into this during our internship, and how it came about is we actually went on a 2-day MSC cruise when we were interns in Durban. And I specifically mentioned 2 days because that's pretty much all that you get off. in internship is 2 days in a row. And we decided, okay, let's go on a cruise for these 2 days of our weekend. And then we went down to the medical center. We spoke to the doctor there, just to hear what it's like, hear what it's all about. And she was, lo and behold, from Durban, and she had done her internship in KZN. She was also recently post-ComServe and had done her ComServe in the Western Cape, which me and my husband knew at that time that we would be going to. And she said something that really stuck with me, and that was that she was happy in her job and that she enjoyed it. And that seems like something so small, but for someone who was really unhappy at that time and who couldn't quite see how I was going to continue doing this for the next 3 to 4 decades of my life, that really resonated with me. And so we started seriously considering this as an option. The same doctor on the cruise ship gave us the number of a recruiter, and we ended up using that recruiter, and he got us successfully placed this year. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So when it comes to courses, Ruhann and Jancke have mentioned pretty much all of those that you will also need if you're interested in working on a cruise line. So it includes BLS, ACLS, PALS, ATLS. As mentioned, ATLS is really hard to get into, but they do take equivalents like ITLS. So don't worry if you did not specifically get a spot for ATLS. And then also the EMSA e-POCUS is important. I highly recommend that you also try and get the accreditation, because remember, a cruise ship is still a remote facility. It's still relatively isolated, and so you need to be able to do some of those emergency scans before you can get to land, or before the patient can be picked up with air transport to get to a CT scan or an MRI. So highly recommend the e-POCUS course, and that you try to get accredited. And then you also will have to have a DPIC, a Diploma in Primary Emergency Care. I do highly suggest that you try and write the one in February after your ComServe, if you are interested in getting a cruise line job the year after your ComServe. So I might be mistaken, but those deadlines might have already closed for February. However, then you can do the second writing after your ComServe. So essentially, you would have to have had your 12 months of experience in an emergency department, an accredited emergency department, but there are other ways. You can also go via the portfolio route. And I will leave my contact details at the end of this, and we'll also open up for questions. So you're welcome to ask me more about that. I myself did the normal 12 months of accredited time, but I know many people, including my husband, who went the portfolio route for the DPIC. And so that is an option. Originally, we were told that you would have to be 1 year post-ComServe to apply for the cruise lines, and many recruiters and people will still tell you this. However, that's not necessarily the case. It's not the case, to be honest, because I am only 1 year post-ComServe at the end of the year, and I've already been working on the ship for 5 months. So you don't necessarily need to be 1 year post-ComServe. But we were preparing as if that was going to be the case. So what we did was we took 2 months off after ComServe. So like Ruhann mentioned, that rest period is fantastic. And for us, it was really intentional. We wanted to take the time off. We did not apply for public posts. We did not apply for private posts at that time. And then we were really fortunate that when we were ready to start applying, we got into private work in the garden route as locums right away. And so we did that for 3 months. And incredibly, certain doors open for us through the recruiter that I'm also going to give you the contact details for later. But we got placements on MSC Cruises as of June 2025 this year. And so I've been on the cruise ship now for 5 months. I'm disembarking next week. And that gives us a really nice transition into how this all works. So let's go on to the slide of the practice. I believe that most of you are probably still here because you want to know, what do you actually do on a cruise ship? How does it work? What does your day-to-day life look like? So essentially, I'm going to run you through the basics really quickly. The current company that I work for, because you need to remember that it might vary across different companies, and I'm only speaking from my own experience, but the current company that I work for, on average, you would be working on the ship for 4 months. And so you sign your contract, you go for your 4-month contract, and then you have 2 months off. You can ask to have that be less, but essentially, if you follow the normal pattern, it would be 4 months on board, 2 months off, 4 months, your next contract on board, 2 months off. So if you take that, it's 8 months of the year that you're working actively on the cruise ship. You're working every single day. There's no weekends or rest days, but you get paid also only for those 8 months. So you have 4 months of holiday every year, which is incredible. Obviously, you would never get that in public, and in private, it would also be really, really hard if you think about the money that's not coming in. I'm also going to talk slightly about finances a little bit later, just so that you can see why you're still able to do that if you're working on a cruise ship. But just keep in mind that, of course, you're only getting paid for the time that you're on board. That might be different in certain other companies, but most of them pay for you only while you're working. So how it would work is that once you've signed your contract, and all of that has been approved, and you've undergone the interview process, and you are employed by the company, they will fly you out to somewhere in the world which you will call your home port. So for instance, my home port is Port Canaveral in Florida, USA. So every week, or sometimes twice a week, we embark from Port Canaveral in Florida, and we do our route. Depending on the itinerary of your ship, you will go different places. My current itinerary goes from Florida to the Bahamas, to Mexico, Honduras, and then back to Florida. So you do that as a cycle, and it's incredible because I mean, I've never seen any of these places before I started this job. So that's such a benefit and such a bonus, is the travel component, because you're not only traveling for your job, but you're traveling with your job, which is, yeah, incredible. So on the ship, we have a dedicated medical center. It's really well resourced when you compare it to what we used to in the public sector. We also have paramedics and first responders who will see the patients initially. We do have nursing staff, so they will do your IV lines and your ECGs and those things that would be similar in a private setting. And then the doctor would run the clinics. And so we have two clinics running simultaneously every day. We have one for the passenger and the guest, and we have one for the ship's crew. So the current ship that I'm on, the capacity is for 5,500 guests and 1,700 crew. So crew is a large part of your responsibilities, and there's a lot of occupational medicine along with the emergency medicine that you're doing on board. So the clinics essentially runs for 3 hours in the morning, both guest and crew, and then again 3 hours in the afternoon. The schedule will vary depending on the ship that you're on, the company that you're working for, and what you decide as a cohort on your ship. We have 3 doctors on our ship, and so we do 2-day cycles in which we would do 2-day shifts, which you have your clinics, and then you cover on call for emergencies in between the clinics from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So you do 12-hour shifts, at least we do, and then you would have 2 night shifts where you cover from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., and then you have 2 days where you just do the clinics. So we don't do nothing. You do work hard, and there are some days where you will work harder than other days, but to be completely honest with you, almost every single day here is less busy than an average day in public, or at least that I had in public in South Africa. So when you are on call, you need to stay on the ship, but when you're not on call, you get to go out in the ports, you get to see that part of the world in which you are on that day, and you get to experience the country and the culture. And I'll show you a little bit of examples later on. You also have the benefit that as a doctor, you are a rather high-ranking officer on the ship, and you get to enjoy several of the benefits that comes with that, including going to the majority of the guest areas, being able to enjoy some of those privileges like eating in the guest buffet on most dinners, and you also get to have crew discount on a lot of the things that they sell on the cruise ship. So it's really fun. It feels like you're on holiday when you're not in the clinic. And then you also have the added bonus that you have your own cabin. So many of the crew does not have their own cabin, they would have to share. But as a doctor, at least the current policy is in our current company that you get to have your own cabin. And for those of you who were in res, it's slightly bigger than a res room. So you have your own bathroom, you have your own bed and desk, and it's that kind of space that is yours. And it's really manageable. You get to I fit all of my clothes into the closet, so you should be fine. There are some sacrifices, obviously, that you're making. You are away from your family, you are working every day without a day off, and you are far from home and your creature comforts that you used to in your environment. But having said that, there are a lot of benefits which I have mentioned, and there are some more that I'm going to go into now. Again, this is my personal experience, so this is just how certain things in my life have been going since we started working on the cruise ship. And I'm going to use the dimensions of wellness concept, which is just a couple of spheres that tell you how you're functioning or how you're dysfunctioning in certain areas of your life. And this is something that I learned at Francie van Sale Res. For those of you who are on Tygerberg campus, you might know or actually have gone there. So when it comes to the physical wellness, I am honestly healthier than I've ever been in my life. I get to exercise every single day. It takes me 5 minutes to go to the gym, which is on the ship, and 5 minutes to come back. I don't have to drive in traffic. I don't have to pay exorbitant Virgin Active fees. So exercise is going well. Then you get to eat much healthier than you used to. You're not rushed, constantly eating junk food because there's a variety of options on the ship. There's healthy options. I don't have to make anything. I don't have to prepare any food. And I don't even have to wash my own dishes. So I love that. And when it comes to sleeping, yes, you do night shifts, you do calls, but on average, to be honest, it's about 3 patients on a night shift. So you still get to live that dream that we all had in ComServe. From your bed, you get to call and then go when there's someone there. So you still have much better sleep than I had in public, and even that I had when I was working in private for a couple of months. So then we go on to emotional wellness, and I'm also healthier in this aspect. So at least compared to the last 3 years, because I have time to pursue my hobbies. I get to read, I get to write, I get to see parts of the world that are inspirational. And I also have 4 months of holiday every year, which is incredible. Socially, you meet people from all over the world. It's a multicultural setting. You become friends and sometimes even as close as family with the crew members and especially the medical team. So you learn a lot from them, and they are from all different backgrounds, all different cultures, and there's a lot of social stimulation that occurs. Occupationally, this was an area that I was really worried about and something that was gnawing at the back of my head. I was worried that I would stagnate or that I might even lose some of my emergency medicine or general skills as a well-rounded doctor that I had gained in South Africa. And so the reality is you are not going to be putting in 10 ICDs every night. You are not going to be removing bullets from open fractures and pushing brain back into the skull. That it's not going to happen, but there are still real emergencies that happen on board. So there are cardiac arrests, there are unstable arrhythmias, patients needing intubation. We do have a small ICU with 2 beds. There are MIs, there are strokes, there are serious injuries and fractures. There's people who come in with hypertensive emergency and flash pulmonary edema, and you still need to know how to manage all of that. So you are still a doctor, you still use all of those skills, but there's less violence, of course, and less trauma, if that is something that you're worried about. But having said that, remember you have 4 months off every year, so you're welcome to go to South Africa and go volunteer or go locum during that time, just to remember what it felt like, if that's something that you miss. But it doesn't have to be your everyday life. Then when we get to finances, I'm not going to give you exact figures, but most of you know what you're getting for ComServe. So It's about 3 times per month what you get for CompServe right now. Again, note that's only over an 8-month period, but even if you average it out over 12 months, it's still about twice that you get during CompServe, and it is tax-free. So in South Africa, if you working outside of the country for 183 days of the year, you don't pay taxes, which is obviously incredible. So you get to not only have holiday time, but you get to have some finances to be able to use that time for spending time with your family on holiday or going overseas or that sort of thing, which is not necessarily the case that it was the last couple of years. Then intellectually, if you like myself, and you have extra clinical, extra medical hobbies, then it's also a really good option, because working on a cruise ship provides you with time each day that you're able to take on certain other activities. For instance, I'm currently doing an online master's in public health through Imperial College London, and my husband recently completed an online postgraduate certificate in finances through UCT. So if you academically incline towards something else, you have time to do that. But also if you just want to focus on different types of hobbies, you can do that, which also again re-emphasizes and circulatorily benefits the other dimensions of your mental and your physical health. And then spiritually, so something that might not be applicable to everyone in terms of religion, but for me, my faith is difficult, because you are not necessarily going to the church or having the support group or the life group that you would when you were back home. But technology is incredible, and you are able to do a lot of those things online nowadays. So it is a challenging part, but it is still it's still able to be done. All right. So then it comes down to, when I put all of those together, I can also honestly say that for the first time since I graduated from med school, I really, really love my job. I love the quality of medicine that I'm able to provide, because I have more time with each patient. I have the resources that I need for that patient. I can do counseling, I can do prevention, and I also love the quality of life that I get to have while I do my job, which is something that I was craving for the last couple of years, and I did not think it was possible, but lo and behold, I can tell you today that it is. And also, I want to leave you with one quote. So it's by Henry David Thoreau, and the quote is, "The price of anything is the amount of life that you exchange for it." For some people, they are willing to sacrifice a lot, including a lot of your life, to pursue your ambitions and your dreams. And if that is you, fantastic. You know, there are people who change the world because they were willing to do that. And I absolutely encourage you to do that if that calls to you. But for me personally, I was not willing to sacrifice more of my life than I really had, and to see what it would be sacrificing going forward for what I was getting from it. And so I'd like to leave you with that quote. Consider it, make sure that you do introspection, that you know what you want out of life. All right, so let's go on to the last slide. This is just to give you a little bit of an overview of my current life. So I'm going to start in the left top hand corner. That's myself and my husband on the cruise ship. And then if you go slightly to the right, that's us in our formal wear. So you have day wear, and then you have formal wear for the different dinners. And then you have gala wear, which is what we're wearing there. Then if you go to the right, that's myself in my red pants. I'm standing there in front of the Kukulkan Temple of the Chichen Itza Plain, which is one of the new 7 wonders of the world in Mexico. That's incredible. I got to do that while I was on call, but obviously my husband, who is incredible, covered for me on that day. But you arrange with your team, and if you are seeing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity on that port and you really want to go, you arrange it and you go. So that was an amazing opportunity opportunity. Then all the way to the right, in the right upper hand corner, that's myself in Nassau. Nassau is the pirate republic of the world, or at least it was in the early 1700s. And so if you like Pirates of the Caribbean, such a cool place to be able to visit and to learn about their history. Then we're going down there on the right hand side with that vertical photo. So that's the ship that I work on, and we were just seeing that lovely that sunset. So there's beautiful nature all around you. You're constantly at sea. Going down again on the right bottom corner, that's me having my morning tea while we pulling into the dock at MSC's private island in the Bahamas. So stunning. It looks exactly like it does on that photo. The waters are clear and you just feel rejuvenated being there. Then if we're going slightly to the left at the bottom, that's myself at NASA. So another one of my off days in Port Canaveral, I was able to go out to Kennedy Space Center, meet a real life astronaut. Really, really cool, you know, just different things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And then if we go towards the left at the bottom, that is where some of my team members are. So that is the island paramedic, and then all the way to the left is my team on board. Incredible people. At the end of the day, the team really makes a difference. They, like I mentioned, multicultural from Indonesia, Philippines, India, and South Africa. And then right, the last photo I just quickly want to touch on is their left bottom hand corner. So it's really exciting sometimes to do medicine at sea because, again, you are relatively remote. When there's an emergency that really needs to get to hospital right now, you take off your shoes and you get that person on the stretcher and you run across the sand into the seaplane, or you get the Coast Guard, or they come with a helicopter, and sometimes you get to even accompany them. So really exciting, really cool things happening. There is still a lot of emergency medicine. You don't have to worry about that. But at the same time, you get to enjoy your life, and there's so many other benefits that come with that. So that is my story. Again, might not be for everyone, but it has really been something that's been enriching for me. And I'm really glad that my husband and I made this decision for ourselves just after ComServe. So you're welcome to go on to the last slide. Thank you, Jancke. This is just to give you the contact details if you are interested. I know that we won't have time to discuss everything right now in the questions and answer section, so please reach out to me. My email is on the screen if this is something that you just have more questions about or that you're interested in. And then if you are actually one step further and you know this is what you want to do, or you want to get some professional opinion about what the process might be like, then that is the recruiter that my husband and I used. His name is Mandrit Blichnoot, and that's his number. He has very graciously allowed me to share that with you today, and he is more than happy if any or all of you end up reaching out to him. So I hope that I've been able to answer some of the questions that you might have had, if this is an option that you are considering. And yeah, I hope you have a fantastic day. I'm looking forward if anyone has any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that fantastic presentation, Shadé. I have people already WhatsApping me about it because it's so great. I think you've kind of sold all of us on working on the ships. It sounds like an amazing, amazing experience. And I think a lot of people might definitely be reaching out to you as well as to your recruiter. And I really, really like that quote that you said, that the emphasis of it is that the quality of your life is worth so much more, and how the value of your life is really how much time you're willing to give up and spend on it. So that is absolutely amazing. So we are now going to move on to questions. I actually already have one question that wasn't in the chat but was WhatsApp to me that I'd like to please ask to any of our speakers. Someone has asked about volunteering, because I think we've all sort of mentioned volunteering, and that it might be a good way to get your foot in the door. The questions are, how do you contact people? Are there specific people that you'd recommend? Do you speak to a clinical manager versus just a consultant in a department? How do you go about finding a volunteer opportunity, especially post-ComServe?
Hi. I think Dr. Botha will definitely have a few things to say about that. So it's honestly just getting your name out there. So how I kind of got these volunteering or locuming or things, it's who you know, it counts more. So emailing to get to a post and just say, like, listen, this is me, this is what I have on my CV, what more do you want or what more do you need, and how can I ensure that you contact me and no one else? So how can I make myself a bit more marketable? And that's where like something like supernumerary posts also come in. Lots of people are doing that. I don't know if it's financially feasible for you to work for free and volunteer, go for it. I was not in that position that I can be able to do that, but it's especially in the Western Cape and Gauteng, people are doing supernumerary posts. So you're working as a medical officer for free, and it's all about exposure and experience, and you do the same job as anybody else, you just don't get paid for it. But what you do get is contact details, you get your name out there, you get good references, and when the post opens, you get considered first. So that's kind of how you start at a point, contact the consultant, contact the clinical manager or the practice manager, where if you're doing that in private, and just make sure that they are aware of you. That's what I would say about that.
Marky, I'll just add on. So yeah, I think definitely you need to reach out to the head of the department that you want to work or volunteer in. Be aware that some departments will make you interview for being able to volunteer. It's not them wanting to be funny or putting you under undue stress, but they just want to make sure that the person that they're allowing into the department will be competent in volunteering there. I agree with Jancke. I think doing it for free is hard. So don't go out and make that the only thing you do. Still try and get something that you can make money to sustain yourself. But also, I know a lot of you probably are all still currently in the system as a ComServe, but working in the public sector currently is hard. The numbers are very, very low for employed people in the sector, and people are struggling. Where I'm doing my reg time now, and currently we have a volunteer in the department, and the guy is hating it, but he is trying to get his trauma time so that he can write his intermediates. But it is really tough if you're doing something and putting yourself through that, exposing yourself to possible burnout if you're not getting money for that. So don't make it, I'd suggest not to make it the only thing you do. Try and still do something that you can make funds. And if you want to arrange with that department, a lot of people will still do it. So what we're doing for this guy is that he's still allowed once or twice a week to go work in private to make some money, and they don't hold that against him. They're still allowing him to do his trauma time. So I'd also suggest not to just do it in any department, but do it in something you're interested in to build that contacts. But also, if you know you want to write intermediates and you need ICU time, reach out to ICUs, try and do your volunteering in those departments so that it's worthwhile for you doing it. But definitely you have to reach out to head of departments in order to arrange that. But be aware they might make you interview for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jancke and Ruhann, for those answers. I think it definitely sheds a lot of light on it. I think I always make the joke that volunteering is becoming the new hell in medicine. But unfortunately, it's also becoming the new reality, and it is definitely tough to sort of acclimatize to that situation. I completely agree. I think having an alternative source of income, especially when you are volunteering, is so essential. Unless you just have money like that, that's also really cool for you. But not everyone will have that opportunity, and not everyone will have that. I have one last question to all three of our people that have spoken, because this is also a very big hot topic. I think we'll also just address it in later talks within the series. But a big question has also come out is about finances, and especially surviving during the unemployment phase. You don't have to give specific numbers. If you'd like to give a number, that'd be fantastic as well. But people are trying to find out, like, what is a good amount to save, especially if you want to be able to cope while unemployed. I see Shadé's put on her camera, so I'll let her start.
Shame, yes, I think everyone will have their story to tell. Everyone's will be different also, because I was in that fortunate position where there were two of us, and so my husband and I both saved, my husband more than myself, during internship and ComServe, with the idea that we were going to be unemployed for like at least 6 months, maybe more. So he would be the better person to ask for that exact figure. But it's really important that if you have been able to, that you saved that amount going into your post-ComServe here, and then doing things to cut costs, even though they might seem like you're going backwards. For instance, my husband and I moved back in with my parents during that time, and a lot of my friends did. I know people who are still living with their parents 2-3 years post-ComServe, even though that was not the plan. And unfortunately, that's just the reality. Like, there is no shame in that, although some people might say otherwise. You just need to do what you need to do in that time until you get a job, until you have a stable income again. And also, unfortunately, life happens whether you have an income or not. So my car broke down 3 times during that immediate post-ComServe time, and we just, we had to dig out of our savings, which became really stressful. And so that is the reality. At the end of the day, if you want to volunteer, I mean, if that is going to lead you to the next step, fantastic, and that's been touched on already, but it's really hard to live without having an income. So it is tough, it is difficult. Try and save where you can, try and cut costs as much as you can. Speak to your family. If moving back in with your parents is an option, consider that. My husband and I both ended up selling our cars. So you just need to try and survive until you have something stable. But it's not easy. And yeah, I think really, really speak to your family and try and get the support that you need, because at the end of the day, you have an incredible degree. You are a doctor, you are a highly sought after professional, and most of us did not think that we would end up being in that difficult position when we started studying for medicine, and neither, did those that support you and are around you, and they understand you're not like some lazy person not doing anything. It's just the circumstances. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, I kind of have the exact same. I think just save from the get-go. I started saving from internship. I just decided to pay off my student loan, focus on that, so that I'm financially able to take out another loan if I need to. But yeah, so I focused in my internship and ComServe. Yeah, I focused on paying off my student loan, and I put half of my salary into that and pushed it. I didn't save much, but I did save at the end of ComServe. I saved enough to financially be independent for at least 3 or 4 months after ComServe, to be able to pay out my debit orders and be able to register for private practice, malpractice insurance, to pay off a car, pay off medical aid, pay off all of those things that you still pay on top of normal groceries and things. So I also moved back with my parents to just it helps with the burden. Then I don't have to pay rent. I don't have to pay. I was in a fortunate position where they assisted with the groceries and all of those things as well. So that took off a big burden in that period, and then added support, emotional support there as well. And you just cut costs as much as you can. You can defer your loan payment. You can defer your medical aid pay. Okay, no, don't do that. But you can defer a few of your income protection or anything extra that you might have for those 3 or 4 months that you are unemployed, and just get a bit of leniency from a financial advisor to help you there. So yeah, I think just maybe be prepared for at least 3 or 4 months of unemployment after ComServe, in order to be able to take the time off that you need. I also took a complete month off. It wasn't by choice, but ended up being by choice. I really wanted to start working immediately, but I took a month off, and I decided, let me just go overseas. I was in the financial position where I could go visit family overseas that I haven't seen in years. So, and when again, like Dr. Breedt said, like, when are you going to get off so long to just be a bit free and rest properly? So I think you do need to prepare for that as well, financially, to have the time off and not just to sit at home and rest. You need to get out of the medical environment and completely rest your soul properly, and plan that for that, definitely, and get excited for that. And then once you get back home, reality hits and you start applying for jobs, and the right door will open for you as you need it. Yeah.
I'll just add something short because I think they've covered basically the same. So I think to say for 3 to 4 months, how much that is going to be is going to depend on your situation. Because like Shadé, I also went to stay with my parents, and that obviously helped and saved costs. But I also think once you've rested and you feel you're ready to get back into the clinical setting, do that. The thing is, if you're going to get a job in private, they do pay well, a lot better than the state, and you won't have to work every day to make the same salary. So even don't pull up your nose if they want to give you
Disagree. They don't pay us better, but
if don't pull up your nose for maybe 1 to 2 shifts a week in the beginning. A lot of it will start like that because they want to just see if they can trust you. But those few shifts a week will still pay well. Yeah, I worked half the amount of days in private than I'm working now, and I made more money there. So yeah, so don't pull up your nose, but please, I also fully support it. Give yourself time to rest. It is a stress. Internship in Comserve is a lot more stressful, I think, than any of us really realize until you start resting. But yeah, try and save a bit, but yeah, like Jancke said, you have to think about other expenses as well. So you might have to write primaries in order to get a job. You might have to do extra courses, and those are big expenses. So you have to try and save for that as well. But like Shadé said, if you have the opportunity or the possibilities there to stay with your parents, speak with them now and try and do that just to save some cost and alleviate some of that stress.
Thank you so much, guys. Those answers were absolutely brilliant. I have looked in the chat and I have not seen any questions. I'm not sure people just aren't able to submit questions into the chat. Oh, there is a Q&A tab. Let me go into that. Perfect. So, okay, we have 2 questions within the chat. So I think they have been answered possibly. Oh, all the other ones have been answered. So we'll go into the ones that haven't been answered. So Kristen Arons asks, in your introduction for Dr. Breedt, you mentioned that you did a DIPEC and DIP HIV management. Can you write those simultaneously, for example, both in July, or did she do one in first semester and the second in second semester? Shadé, if you are able to answer that question.
Sure. So this might not be for everyone, but I did both of mine in the first semester. So I was in the privileged position where my husband had done his HIV diploma in his ComServe, and so he prepared me really well, and I only studied about a week for my HIV diploma because I was focusing so much on my DIPEC, and then it was only 1 week apart, so I had that added advantage of him being able to prepare me, but I did really well, passed really well, both of them, so it is possible. The HIV diploma is much less work than the DIPEC, so I would also suggest, if you're planning on writing them both in the same semester, that you focus most of your time on the DIPEC and that you do the boot camp DIPEC course. A lot of the questions do end up coming from that. But for the HIV diploma, literally, they tell you step by step what you need to study. Just listen to the videos and you will literally get all the answers from that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shadé. And Shadé is a very humble person because she didn't just pass both of those very well, she passed them both with distinction, which I think is absolutely amazing. So definitely a lot of cheers to Shadé for that. Okay, and then we have a second question, also to Shadé, incidentally. It's from Lucy Zonzo. She asks, when applying to the cruise ships, were there any specific language requirements?
So obviously you need to be able to speak English, and not much more than that. So if you went to an English school or you can prove that your home language is English, that's where it ends. But for us that went to Stellenbosch, or that also has the option of doing your undergraduate in another language, you will just do a quick English course when you come on board. But for my husband and myself, we were already employed at that time, so you don't have to worry about it. And when it comes to different parts of the world, they will ensure that you have translators as you need. We in in the US at the moment, so most of it is English, but there are people on board who can speak Spanish and the languages that are required if your patient cannot speak to you in English. For instance, our next contract, my husband and I will be going to Japan from January 2026. And so in that contract, most people are speaking Japanese and Chinese. And so there are nurses on board who actually translate for you. And that's the only reason that they are there. So you will be supported and you don't have to worry about that.
Perfect. Thank you so, so much. And then there was one last question, but I suspect it has already been answered in the chat. Yes, it has, by Ruhann. So I think that actually brings us to a close for today's session. I'd like to say a big thank you to our speakers. You guys have given amazing presentations and I think so much more insight to ComServes who are really going to be venturing out into the world of work next year. I guess non-guaranteed work, should I say. I'd like to really thank Sama as well as the organizers in JUDASA for organizing this session. As I said in the beginning, this is the first of 3 sessions. The next 2 sessions will happen on the 13th of November and the 27th of November. So we'll get to ask lots more questions about moving into post-ComServe space at those sessions as well. And I'd like to thank all the attendees for coming. Thanks so much, guys, for joining. These sessions are recorded, so if you have missed anything, you can always come back to it on the SAMA YouTube page. But until next time, good night.
Thank you.